Talking Chicago Bears football here on Sports Talk Chicago. Free agency just a couple of weeks away. I am going to be doing more of a deep dive on some of these free agent targets, possibly for the Chicago Bears. But as I mentioned before the break, I have been told by several different sources that the Chicago Bears are getting ready and preparing to spend big in free agency, specifically on the offensive line. I think they're also going to be targeting a couple people on the defensive line, defensive tackle. I don't think that part is going to be breaking the market. But when we talk about maybe resetting the market at guard or even center, I think the Chicago Bears have a strong chance to be very, very active when free agency starts in just a couple of weeks. A lot of people are talking about is Drew Dalman. Drew Dalman is the center for the Atlanta Falcons. Also a guy who's 26 years old, entering his prime. Now, in terms of pass blocking, he's a very polarizing person because he uses a lot of technique instead of his size and strength to necessarily keep guys off of the opposing quarterback. He also had a little bit of an issue from a pass blocking perspective last year of dealing with the statue that is Kirk Cousins. Maybe that changes a little bit as things move along. But he was number 4 according to Pro Football Focus in run blocking. Dalman's had a couple of issues with some injuries. He did have an ankle injury last year, but before that, he's been incredibly healthy most of the year. And he does do a lot of great work with zone runs concepts, something that Chicago Bears ran last year and something that Ben Johnson loves to run, a lot, Jahmyr Gibbs style, what he could possibly bring to the offense for the Chicago Bears. So if you put Trey Smith together and Drew Dalman, all of a sudden, this is a match made in heaven. The only thing about it right now is what I am hearing is that Drew Dalman is trying to reset the market for the center position as well, which might put the Chicago Bears in a little bit of a tough spot. We're in a position where, yes, we are desperate. We need to get better quickly. How do you do that? Put it on the credit card. Creed Humphrey, the center for the Baltimore Ravens right now, is making $15 million a year. That's the highest paid center in the game. A really, really good contract for a center. And something I believe Drew Dalman should probably be pretty happy with is around $12 to $13 million a year. I'm personally hearing that his agent wants to open up the negotiation between $18 to $20 million a year. I personally think that's going to be a huge non-starter, and I'm not exactly which team that actually is going to go out there and fork that sort of money over. So the Chicago Bears need to be firm with some boundaries on this one to try and get that deal done. There's other guys out there on the offensive line too as well. There's a lot of people on Twitter that want to kind of try and connect the Chicago Bears to a guy like a Will Freeze. I'll just call him French Fries because it's fun. Another guy who was a 7th-round pick, worked his way into an above-average starter. He took another step forward, but again, he got hurt towards the end of the year. I believe he had a tibia injury in October, required surgery, ended his season. Doesn't look like the Indianapolis Colts are going to be bringing him back. When he is healthy, though, he is a very good right guard in the NFL. Perhaps he could play left guard as well. He's an excellent run blocker. Dude's got a little bit of a mean streak, can set that tone a little bit, a.k.a. if someone maybe hits Caleb Williams out of bounds with a little extra shove, Will Freeze, Mr. French Fries himself, is going to be right there in his face protecting his quarterback, that kind of thing. A lot of people have connected them to him. But again, I think that's going to be a little bit of a medical issue. And honestly, if we're going to play that game of a medical issue, I would at least think that the Chicago Bears would have a conversation about what is the number to bring Tevin Jenkins back. A lot of people are trying to give him credit that he started 14 games, but how many of those games did he actually finish? He only allowed 4 sacks last year, and we know that when he is healthy and right, that the offensive line simply looks different. It's just a different vibe out there. But again, what is the number to bring him back, and how many years would you have to commit to Tevin Jenkins and actually feel good about it? Him, Freeze, they feel like backups, right? Or backup plans. Other backup plans, there's a guy like Brandon Scherf, 34 years old, still one of the best in the business, veteran, stopgap, 1-year guy. Another guy, too, as well, that I found to be a little interesting was Kevin Zeitler from the Detroit Lions. Again, now look, he turns about 35 in a couple of weeks, but he's played 700 snaps, at least in all 13 seasons, and at least 950 snaps in 10 straight seasons, all granted at right guard. He earned his first Pro Bowl in 2023, and then obviously came over to the Detroit Lions last year. His pressure rate was a career low, best career average among guards in his class. He remains one of the league's steadiest run blockers. These are all in my notes here. Wants to keep playing. You would think Detroit would probably be his first phone call, but we'll see what happens there. So those are some offensive line options right there that all of them, some of them a little bit more long-term, other of them quick stopgap options that can just kind of get them through the next season, or at the very least, get you through next season while you draft some developmental guys and not feel like you have to throw them to the wolves right away. If you bring in some of these veterans, now all of a sudden you could draft, in theory, the center of the future in the draft and a left tackle and a guard, and one of those dudes doesn't necessarily have to start right off the jump. I know everybody wants to do it through the draft, but I will tell you that I will be a little squeamish and I will be a little scared if the Chicago Bears were to draft 2 offensive linemen and then all of a sudden wanted them to both start on week 1. I mean, how much inexperience can you have on one line and expect to have positive results come out of it? I think Darnell Wright is a piece they can work with moving forward in the future. All the other guys are all replaceable. So you can mix and match this however you want with youth, veteran leadership, Pro Bowl caliber, 35-year-old Kevin Zeitler, Moxie, whatever you want to do. They can mix and match on this. But my opinion is they at least have to do something in free agency just a little bit instead of going all in on the draft and then forcing those guys to produce results right off the gate.